Hello there everyone, I am not Captain Barsh, but I am Alex from RPG Site, and the other week I went to Square Enix's offices and played a little bit of Final Fantasy XII The Zodiac Age. Now, I can't show you loads of stuff of this game, we're not allowed to show story stuff, because even though it is a decade old game, you know, there are people who haven't played it, Square would like us not to, so we're not going to. But the game does have a bunch of new features and stuff, and I did just quickly want to show you some footage and run down what's new, the major changes to the game, while you can look at the footage to get an idea of how good the game looks. So to start off, we have the license grid, and we have the new job system that is in the game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this footage, so you will find it jumps around a bit, so it's showing on screen what I'm talking about to you as I'm talking about it. So yes, a big change this time is this is the International Zodiac job system version of the game. So if you don't know anything about that, let me quickly jump back and explain. So back when Final Fantasy XII came out, it was a good game, it was an interesting game with its fantastic take on active time battle and all that sort of stuff. Well, Active Dimension Battle, I think it was, or something like that. They did give it a new name. And then, afterwards, after it came out in the West and everything, they released a second version of the game in Japan called the International Zodiac Job System. Now, that featured a lot of the changes that had been made to the Western version of the game, thus International. But also it featured the job system, thus Job System, a whole new setup for the game, which actually added the traditional Final Fantasy classes like White Mage, Black Mage, Knight, Red Mage, and stuff like that into the game. So this version is based off that, not the original Final Fantasy XII. So even if you've played the original, the gameplay systems and the character progression and stuff is going to be very, very different, and you're going to get quite a lot new and different out of playing that version of the game. So that's pretty cool. Now, a few things have changed even since then. So one of the big things is now you can actually have 2 different jobs per character, which gives you access to 2 different license boards with 2 different sets of moves. Now, there is some overlap, and what that means is if there's an overlap between, say, a red battle mage tech skill and a black mage skill, and you already have red battle mage, and then you unlock black mage as your second job or class or whatever you want to call it, you will then actually have access, all the abilities from the one that you already had will appear unlocked on the other. And that's actually quite interesting, because it means that you won't just be starting from one place on a job board. You technically you'll be able to expand out from any spot where you already own a skill, and you may own a skill from a previous job. And you can switch back and forth between the 2 jobs once you've picked the second to unlock with just a press of the button while you're on the license board. Now, the points that you use to level up the license board are shared between the 2, so you have to think very carefully about exactly how you're going to build your character. And you're not switching between classes while you're playing either. It's like you choose 2 and you will have access to the skills of both those, and then the weapons you equip and the moves you choose to use in battle will help to determine if you lean more towards one or the other. So yeah, that's one major change. Obviously, the Gambit-based system is still there, just as before, so Final Fantasy XII is more based around pre-battle prep, and then you sort of sitting back and watching more in battle, and then only taking over when you need to adjust something because there's an emergency or because there's a weakness you want to take advantage of and things like that. So that's all in there, just as it was. Just to talk about one feature that I haven't really got much video footage of. There is a new mode which is Trial Mode, and Trial Mode is basically a coliseum, an arena. It's battles that match battles from throughout the story, and they grow in intensity and difficulty throughout the game, throughout the Trial Mode. So that's really it's pure combat. It's a completely different type of challenge. There are 100 different battles to the trial mode, and I was allowed to play 15 of them. And they do the difficulty does ramp up quite quickly, and you're having to make strong choices as you go, which is cool. That's the sort of RPG mechanics we like to see. There is one other major change to the game, but I want to cover that. I want to save that for the end. So before we get onto that, I guess it's worth talking about the non-gameplay changes. So they've sort of touched up the character models. They were very keen to point out repeatedly that, for instance, Fran, they've boosted the number of polygons or whatever on her backside, or I'm not sure it is specifically the number of polygons, but the point is they kept saying, yes, Fran's bottom is very much improved over and over again. And generally speaking, the character models they look much better. This definitely is less of an upgrade, say, than Final Fantasy X HD Remaster, but I think the thing that you need to keep in mind when I say that is that Final Fantasy XII was a much better looking game to begin with, and there is a lot less work that they had to do in the first place. A major thing is Final Fantasy XII is a very open game. You know, when you think about it, actually, it was sort of ahead of its time. When you look at it now and you think about some of the things that Final Fantasy XV has done in edging towards a Western style of gameplay and stuff, I think Final Fantasy XII is almost a little bit ahead of the curve there. But there were technical restraints that got in the way. So, for instance, you know, the game obviously is split into discrete zones, and on the PS2 the load times were pretty intense. They're very, very quick here on PS4. This was on regular PS4 as well, not the Pro, so that's nice. Obviously the frame rate, rock solid. I think the game looks good. If I have a criticism out of my hands on, it's that I very quickly realised, oh boy, this is a camera from this is a PS2 era camera in terms of the camera control. There's certainly the boss battle against is it the Elder Worm or something like that? But in that arena, I had issues where I was, trapped against the wall, and there's an enormous boss, and the arena isn't that big, and the camera's sort of jutting up, so I can't even see what's bloody going on, and that's a nightmare. Obviously, this is an older game, so that stuff is going to happen in older games. They haven't changed it that much. Also, considering the spec difference between the PS2 and the PS4, there's some really weird, aggressive culling going on with draw distance, where characters disappear while really you should still be able to see them. I'll let the video speak for itself there. I'm not sure what that's about, but I was a little disappointed with that. Those are my two criticisms from what I played. Soundtrack, they have options for both the classic original soundtrack and a remastered version, same as you would have been used to on Final Fantasy X if you played that. And also the same for voice. You have English or Japanese dubs. You can choose which you prefer, and you can change that on the fly at any point mid-game. So that's all lovely. That's, a really nice feature set. I think exactly what most people who played the original and loved the original would have asked for. I think, for the record, I think Final Fantasy XII is one of the best games in the series. I do think the story sort of drops off a cliff a little bit later on. I think you can perhaps feel that the original director departed the game halfway through, and perhaps it was never quite joined up or finished in the way it might have been under the one person. And I think the story's where you feel that the most, and sadly they are not really doing any story stuff with this. It is exactly the same game. So whereas with 10 they did in that package include the novel and stuff like that to expand it, this is just original Final Fantasy XII as it was story-wise. But the big new addition is the fast forward, the speed mode multiplier, as they call it in the game. So this is literally, if you've played the remakes of Final Fantasy X or 7, you will have experienced this, or even the mobile ports of 9 and 6 and stuff. It's a fast forward button. Now, in Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Age, it actually comes in two different flavours. You can't switch between this just by tapping a button. You do have to go into the menu, but you can choose between ×2, double speed, or ×4, quadruple speed, and the game will run at that speed, and it will run fabulously at that speed. Once you've chosen in the menu, in the settings, which of the two you want, you can then activate and deactivate that speed boost with a press of one controller button. But sadly, you can't do one press to get 2 times and 2 presses to get 4 times or something like that. You have to change between them in the menu. Not quite sure why that is, but hey ho, there you go. Yeah, and you'll see in the background footage of this running in the 2 different modes, so you can see just how fast it moves. It's pretty good looking. It runs well. There's the same sort of problem that there was in Final Fantasy X and VII, where perhaps you struggle to control the character because he moves so fast. But other than that, which can't really be helped, it is a really, really good feature and really is going to be useful for Final Fantasy XII, which is a game that does have its moments where there's quite a bit of tedious battling or indeed tedious grinding, or just long battles outright where you're just waiting for your gambits to execute in the way you want them to and so on. So yeah, I think the speed boost is pretty good, pretty useful, and as I'm sure you'll be able to see be in the video attached to my voice, I think it makes a significant difference to just how, well, it definitely makes a significant difference to how quickly the game plays out. So, yes, that is Final Fantasy XII HD Remaster. I do want to say the cutscenes look fabulous. Not allowed to show you them, but they look brilliant. The CG stuff looks a little grainy. I'm not 100%, but if I had to guess, I think they haven't re-rendered that stuff. They've just used the highest resolution stuff they had lying around. It's obviously higher res than what was on the PS2 disc, but it's just not as crisp as you might like. A little bit of artifacting and stuff that I noticed. So, that is what it is. Yeah, I'm excited for this game. I liked Final Fantasy XII a lot, but I actually haven't played it since... Literally, I finished it a week before it came out in the West when I reviewed it. Sort of started it a couple of times and then realised, man, this game is enormous, I don't have time to do this. And also realised that, really, knowing that the International Zodiac Job System version existed, it always felt like a bit of a waste to go back to regular old Final Fantasy XII. So I'm glad that finally, in the West, we have an opportunity to play this without it being through a fan mod, a fan translation, because that stuff does exist, but you never know how good it is, how accurate it is. Nice to get something nice and official. So yeah, this is coming out on PS4. It's not coming to Vita. It's not coming to Switch or PC or Xbox One or anything like that yet. I did have a chat with the developers while I went after this hands-on on the same day, and I did ask them about that. I think Vita is out of the window. I think this they've clearly done stuff to this that they didn't do to Final Fantasy X HD Remaster, just in terms of the performance and stuff that rules out Vita. They did sort of they laughed and said yes, we know, because I said to them, I think all the questions you get about will you bring a game to Vita, those questions aren't going to go away as such. They're just going to become, will you bring this game to Switch? And they laughed and said, yes, we're aware. And they did say, once the game is out, they if it's successful, they'd love to look at bringing it to more platforms, or indeed looking at more games set in the Evilis Final Fantasy universe. So maybe a sequel to Final Fantasy XII, or maybe something new in the world of tactics. Who knows? But the thing is, they're not ruling it out, but this game has to do well first. So fingers crossed it does. And hopefully this footage has helped to convince you. I'm plenty excited. So yeah, if you want to see more from Final Fantasy XII, The Zodiac Age, and Final Fantasy in general, and the big wide world of role-playing games in general, be sure to hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, etc. It helps us. And do check out our website. That's rpgsite.net, and you can find us on Twitter at rpgsite. Plenty from us on all sorts of games, so be sure to do that. Anyway, yeah, that's Final Fantasy XII. Until next time, everyone. See ya.